and welcome to CX Today. I'm Rhys Fisher, Deputy Editor, and today I'm joined by Simon Adnett, the VP of Sales for the UK and Ireland for Enghouse. Simon, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Very well. Yep, thanks for having me, Rhys.
No, absolutely. I think what we've got lined up today is going to be a really interesting chat. So we're going to be looking at AI, which I know isn't perhaps a revolutionary topic on its own, but more specifically, we're going to be looking at AI that actually works and delivers those real CX results and real business impact that these companies are looking for. So on that point, many CX leaders perhaps feel pressure to adopt AI. What's your take on the current AI landscape in customer experience, and where is it falling short, do you think?
I think um, I think one of the challenges people face around AI and their implementation of AI is sometimes the sort of the understanding of their own organization, and there's sometimes a bit of a rush to implement AI for the potential contact avoidance benefits. So really looking at how can we cut demand through to our agents and increase automation in theory, without upsetting the experience for our customers. But at the same time, I think we've probably all experienced, interactions with AI where that just unfortunately doesn't kind of deliver. And I think that's one of those things where I would say AI is a bit like anything really, and this applies across all industries. But if you kind of look at the building trade, there's always this concept of measure twice, cut once, and I think it's very true when you're looking at the implementation of any technology, but particularly AI as well. It's like get a really good understanding of what it is you want it to achieve, what are the true objectives, um, and then understanding the process or thing that's being automated, and is that currently working well or is it not? Because I think the other thing you see quite a lot of is poor processes then ultimately being automated, and that's just like taking a bad experience and multiplying it really. So I think that's definitely a key thing I see that is done wrong.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I like the building analogy. I think that works really well there. So moving on here, I've been obviously prior to the interview doing a little bit of background here, and Engels in the past have said that AI should solve real problems, not just create more dashboards. Can you maybe unpack that and perhaps talk about some of the most meaningful use cases where you're seeing AI make a measurable difference for some of your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sort of talked about just now the sort of measure twice, cut once, but I think we absolutely help with that because of what we can do around automating evaluation and understanding of interactions within the contact center. That can really help organizations drive an understanding of the contact that they're seeing, what their customers' experience of that contact is. Um, and I think when you start getting that level of understanding across every interaction that's happening within your contact center, then you've got a much better foundation to then look at how you can use automation technologies and AI at the front end of the contact center to look at automating processes, agent assistance. If you can identify the challenges that agents are experiencing when they're trying to handle customer interactions, then you can look at, well, where are my quick wins or where are my ROIs around implementing technology to automate, either providing them with the relevant bits of information or completely automating the interaction altogether. So I think what we've got really is a really nice suite of technology where we can get the understanding and we can do the analysis, as well as then providing solutions around the automation and the assistance side of things as well.
Great. So I'm just going to move on, I suppose, to another area that you guys at Enghouse are perhaps very strong in championing right now, and that's this idea of failure demand.
Mm.
Do you maybe talk about how AI is helping to spot and eliminate avoidable contacts before they hit the queue?
Yeah, yeah. So, but because of the work that we've put in around the quality assurance side of things, um, we can look at doing automation of uh, quality evaluations on all the interactions coming through the contact center. And I think that's really a game changer for organizations, because if you look at any quality team within an organization, even if that's sort of quite a sizable department that's been heavily invested in and is a real area of focus, they're still going to be analyzing 1 to 2% of the interactions that are coming through a contact center. So you're really looking at a relatively small fraction of your overall demand coming into the contact center. And so trying to get a sort of a wider understanding of everything that's going on can be a little bit tricky, because when you've got such a small sample size of data, there's a danger you can kind of get drawn into the wrong areas. And I think what we can do is, because we can look at the sentiment across those interactions and the sentiment shift, whether it goes from sort of positive to negative, or neutral to negative, or worse, I guess, negative to um, double negative, even worse. Then we can start looking at, okay, where have we got challenges around the customer experience? And then using the voice of the customer analysis we've got with the large language models, we can then start looking at, well, what's happened on that interaction, and what was the topic, and why did that cause the problem? And the thing there is, you will very quickly start to see, when you look at everything that's happening in the contact center, where you've got the challenges. Because really what we allow you to do is kind of take every element at the micro, but view it from the macro. And so from a management level, I can quickly see where I've got a hotspot, and I can then focus my quality team on that and identifying the challenge. That then allows you to spot failure demand. And that means you can then go and speak to the area of the business that's generating that failure and fix it. At which point you will actually cut out the demand coming into the contact center altogether from that piece of failure. And that's massive, because then you can actually reduce the demand coming into your contact center. And that's not something you've done by putting an element of AI at the front end to automate something. You've actually fixed something that was broken in your organization, and that stops the demand coming in the front door in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. We mentioned earlier how I think that's an area that perhaps doesn't get spoken about enough, but can obviously make really significant changes or benefits to
Yeah.
companies. Just for this next one, I was moving on. I want to talk about another thing that the company has spoken about, and it's this aiming for 100% interaction evaluation. That I suppose sounds a little ambitious. I was interested in looking at that in terms of how does that impact perhaps QA and compliance teams, and maybe also what kind of agent or customer benefits are you seeing when this approach is deployed?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned before, I think the challenge has been, even with the best intentions in place, you're challenged to really get a full picture of quality across the contact center. And because we can now run every interaction through our quality assessment, and we can automate that with the use of AI, what it means is that quality teams, they can write in what they want the AI to be assessing. So they can be quite prescriptive about what they want it to be looking for and what their expectation is on interactions and how they're handled. And the AI will then be able to assess literally everything that comes through the contact center, regardless of the channel. So obviously with text-based media, we can run that through. Where we've got calls, we can transcribe those so that we can also pass across the text transcripts of those into the AI as well. So we can literally look at every second of every interaction that's going through the contact center and get an understanding of it. And that means for quality teams, then they can then start homing in on the areas that need focus and need improvement. So rather than spending their time doing the assessment, the AI can actually flag up the areas that need focus, having looked across everything. So the sort of the way to look at it really is it helps you find that needle in the haystack. That one or two interactions that you just would really, if you were sort of throwing the dart into the dartboard in terms of what you're going to be analysing or doing quality checks on that week, your odds of finding that interaction would have been pretty slim. It would have been chance. Whereas we can now really flag that up, and then the people with the smarts, the humans, they can come in and have a look at what's gone wrong, what needs improvement, and identifying what can be done. And that, if that's failure demand, then that's going and talking to somebody else in another area of the business and discussing how they can work together to drive improvement. And I think suddenly you've got a quality team and a capability there that's adding value right across the business. It's not just a customer contact or a customer experience that's focused purely around the contact center technology or the contact center staff. You're looking at customer experience across your entire organization then, and I think that's the game changer.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because that leads quite nicely, I think, into my next question. I was going to ask. Obviously, currently in the sector, there's a lot of talk about agent assist, but and obviously, and within that, perhaps the wider relationship between AI and humans. How would you say you or Enghouse avoids perhaps over automation while still giving agents that beneficial, that meaningful support?
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question actually. So, I mean, I think there's there's different levels of automation that you can do, and I think one of the sort of holy grails, if you like, of agent assistance is that you can reduce the cost of onboarding staff into the contact center, because the people working in the contact center as a whole, they're the biggest expense you've got working within the contact center, but they're also the biggest value, if you like. And so if you can have somebody come into the contact center and you can reduce their time to be effective from, say, 12 weeks down to 8 weeks or down to 6 weeks, then all of a sudden, that new resource you've got coming in has an inherent value to you straight away. So I think that's a key part of it, is giving them access to the right information when they need it, without them necessarily knowing where they need to go or what it is they're looking for. So you can kind of reduce the amount that needs to go in here as part of training for them to be effective. I think the other thing is, certainly from an automation perspective, there's a lot of activities agents have to do within the contact center that can be quite repetitive and kind of quite arduous, boring, ultimately. And I think, it's unlikely an agent is going to complain if you can automate some of that stuff and take it away from them. So I think one of the other things it can do is, shifting from pure assistance to more complete automation, is it can actually make the job more interesting, which ultimately can help reduce attrition as well, because you're then looking at agents that are engaged, they're doing interesting stuff, they're dealing with the more complex inquiries that require them to have maybe more autonomy in some of the decision making and empowering them to do that. So I think, yeah, it's that fine balance between putting what they need at their fingertips as opposed to almost taking away the typing for them. And I think a good example would be, just in terms of sort of naming convention, if you look at Microsoft with Copilot, it's Microsoft Copilot, not Microsoft Pilot. And I think the idea is it's there to be an assistance. It's not there to completely fly the plane, if you like. And I think that would be a kind of a good example or analogy to the contact center agent, that this is about assisting them and improving their experience as well. I think we've probably all been in a scenario where we've been on a call with an agent and then they've put you on hold, or they've had to go away because they either need to look something up or the system's running slow or whatever it is, where ultimately they're trying to find something out or check something. If we can put that right at their fingertips, or right up there on the screen for them as and when they need it proactively, then that's only going to improve things from their experience of working within the contact center, but it's going to give a better customer experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you discussed there, 'cause again, it leads on nicely to my final question. And obviously, we've seen perhaps trust and transparency becoming real differentiators when it comes to AI. So I suppose this is sort of a two-part question.
Mm.
First of all, how is Enghouse helping customers deploy AI that teams actually trust to use? And secondly, what makes your approach more trustworthy and business aligned compared to other models that we see on the market?
So I think one of the things we do is, but because we've got this technology around allowing us to understand the interactions that are coming through the contact center, and that's sort of driven from the quality and the voice of the customer side of things. I think, we've got this approach really where we look at, let's measure, let's understand, and then we can advise. I think we speak to a lot of customers that have an idea of what they want to automate, but what we can do, and we're supporting this by offering, proof of concepts of our AI technology as well, to allow customers to get this understanding and kind of see the value of it, is, we can measure and we can quantify some of the things that they probably have a pretty good idea of, or they have a suspicion of, but we can put cold hard facts, if you like, to support it. And I think what that helps do then is it helps identify the areas you want to tackle, but also helps you build the ROI around implementing them. And really what that does is it removes a lot of the risk around implementing the technology. I mean, a great example would be if you can see a high volume process and you think, or high volume interaction, and you think, well, it's relatively low complexity, I think I could automate that. It's really useful to then look at what's the experience or the sentiment that's associated with that. Because if it's largely neutral, it doesn't even need to be positive, but if it's generally like a neutral sentiment, that's a prime example of what you could look at automating, because you've got something there that, in theory, should be relatively low cost to implement a solution around, because it's got low complexity. It's got a high volume associated with it. So that's kind of in if you look at your tree of things you want to tackle, that's your low hanging fruit, right? Because you can see that in the numbers and you can see that in the associated sentiment. I think that the danger is you look at a process, it's got a high volume associated with it. It looks relatively low complexity. Yeah, I'm going to hit that. If you've got a really negative sentiment associated with that, because actually it's a poor process or it's not a great experience for customers, that's dangerous to then look at sort of just throwing, conversational AI or some sort of automated process on the front of that, unless you've really understood why are we generating the negative sentiment there, what can we do to improve that experience. So I think, coming back to what I say, that measure, understand, and then advise, that's definitely an approach that works, because I think I see a lot of people also struggle to build that case study around, so not that case study, that business case around automation or an investment in AI. People are like, well, we know we want to do it, we think there's an opportunity, but I'm not sure how I quantify it, and I'm not sure, what I could potentially see in terms of savings. So, if you can gather that information and help them build that case, it makes it a lot easier to do. And you can then start small and expand, the use cases you're tackling and get into more complex things because they'll have the confidence in the technology then as well. I think sometimes the danger is that approach of there's so much stuff we want to do. I don't know where to start almost. And we can help sort of identify the key targets.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really nice place to end things. Thanks again for joining me today, Simon. It's been a really, really good chat. I think we've touched on some areas of AI that I think perhaps maybe overlooked or just not discussed as much as others, and I think it's going to be really informative for people. So thank you.
Yeah, good to chat.
Great. And I would also just like to quickly thank our viewers as well for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. And remember, you can visit cxtoday.com for more stories like these. Until next time, thank you for watching.